There's a growing group of believers who are questioning the narrative of Christmas or the origin. Some are convinced it comes from pagan traditions. Some are convinced that it's a simple and harmless commemoration of the birth of Messiah. Alongside this discussion, I think Galatians 4 needs to be examined because I believe when taken in proper context, Paul actually condemns the practice of Christmas, which mixes the ways of the world with service to our Heavenly Father. And I'd like the opportunity to present that case to you. If you believe that this is correct or if you think this is incorrect, would love to hear if you think Paul would condemn Christmas today is the question. Galatians 4. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differs nothing from a servant, though he be Lord or master of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. Even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under what? The elements of the world. Now, you can just read right past this and say, oh, okay, elements of the world, great. But when you really look at the word there, elements, the word is stoichion, which means element, principle, rudiment. However, looking a little further, it says, meaning to proceed in a row or to march in order. Looking at a closely related word, systoikio, means to correspond to be in line with, to be in agreement with, or again, to align in marching order. And so Paul's talking about here in times past. So before we were in Messiah, we were in bondage or slavery under the direction or the marching order of the world. Now, let's go further. Let's go to Galatians 4:8, just a few verses later. Howbeit then, when you knew not Elohim, the Hebrew word for God, you did service unto them which by nature are no Elohim. So if Christmas, or this winter celebration, winter solstice, does in fact do service to pagan deities, they are, of course, they are not Elohim. There's only the one true Elohim that man must serve. But now, after that you have known Elohim, or rather are known of Elohim, how turn you again to the weak and beggarly elements whereunto you desire again to be in bondage? Now, what's interesting is Christianity, mainstream Christianity has been teaching for centuries that Paul is getting ready to condemn the observation of the biblical feasts found in Leviticus 23 and, of course, elsewhere all through the Bible. However, we have already established that these weak and beggarly elements is the marching orders of the world, certainly not the Torah or the law of the Most High. And certainly, there's nowhere in the Bible that supports that the law or the Torah of the Most High is in fact bondage, but it says it's freedom. So what's interesting here is Paul is talking about the weak and beggarly elements, so the marching orders of the world where you desired again to be in bondage, and then he confirms here that he's talking about appointed times of the world. You observe days, months, times, and years. And so the context of these is the worldly direction, right? The marching orders to be in alignment with or to be in agreement with. So Paul is directly talking about the appointed times of the years, which our Heavenly Father strictly condemns this. In Deuteronomy 12, he specifically says, you can't look at the nations and say, how do they serve their gods? Well, I want to serve mine the same way. He says, you don't do this to me. In Deuteronomy 4, he says, do not add to or take away from the commandments. And then Paul finishes up here, I'm afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. And so these are some stark words. Paul is talking almost in a loss of salvation here. And so, again, the context here is the appointed times of the years, or being in alignment with the world. And at least from a lens from someone in the United States, it's very odd to not do Christmas around here. If someone finds out you don't do Christmas, they're like, what? They're like, it's almost like, wow, do you not eat food? I mean, and to think that it was this holiday was outlawed at the foundation of this country. Colossians 2:8 says, but beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Messiah. And for the crowd that's saying that Christmas, that the Christians started Christmas and then pagans saw how fun it was and joined in later, I would encourage people to do their own research as to the origins of this. And even if at worst, or at best, this was a tradition of men, we know in Matthew 15, Messiah is not impressed with the traditions of men. He actually condemned those as well. He says, in vain you do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. And so one other thing I wanted to make mention is Romans 6:16 says, Don't you know, or know you not, that whom you yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants are to whom you obey? So basically he's saying who you obey is your master. That's how you prove who is your master, is by who you obey. And so the question here is, are you obeying our Heavenly Father? Are you obeying our Messiah? Or are you obeying the commandments of men, or even worse, the doctrines of devils? 1 Corinthians 10:21 says, you cannot drink the cup of the master and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the master's table and of the table of devils. You can't do it. You can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Amos 8:10, he denounced and says, I will turn your feasts into mourning and all your songs into lamentation, and I will bring sackcloth upon all loins and baldness upon every head, and I will make it as the mourning of an only son, and the end thereof as a bitter day. The reason he's saying your feast is because he clearly told us which ones are his feasts. Leviticus 23:2, speak unto the children of Israel, which, if you didn't know, you are through faith in Messiah. Paul says it in Galatians 3, that when we're in Messiah, that we are one, that there's no Jew or Gentile, that we're one. So speak unto the children of Israel and say to them concerning the feasts of Yahweh, commonly known as the Lord, or our Heavenly Father, the feasts of Yahweh, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, so public gatherings, even these are my feasts. So there's different feasts. There's his feasts, and there's your feasts, and there's feasts of these devils. And for those that say, hey, I just want to commemorate our Messiah, he told you how. Luke 22:19 says, and he took the bread and gave thanks and brake it and gave unto them, saying, this is my body, which is given for you. This do in remembrance of me. And for those that may not know, this was the Passover. So if you want to celebrate our Messiah, he already told you how to do it. And it cannot be through man-made traditions. So again, going back to the beginning of this, I believe if Paul were here today, he would condemn Christmas. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. So blessings to you, and shalom.